The Sixers off-season saga continues. Still no contract extension for Quentin Grimes, but today we get a couple cryptic tweets that could indicate the future. We'll talk about that. Also, one bold take from an Eastern Conference executive about VJ Edgecombe. I don't know if I believe it, but we'll react, and we take a look at the Sixers' projected lineup and depth chart. The question is this a championship team? We'll talk about it all, but welcome into Philly Take with RB. I'm RB. You know what to do. Follow us everywhere, man. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Make sure you have those noties on here on the YouTube channel as we continue to pump out content in the offseason. And today we will start it off with our boy Quentin Grimes. Still no contract. What is it, July 24th? Still no contract update. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire explanation as to why, but go check out the last couple of videos. We've talked about the situation, and we've gone through everything from the money to when they could sign, all that stuff. So check it out on the recent videos. Do you think Quentin Grimes is going to be a Sixer next year? Well, let's go through a couple of cryptic tweets that appeared today. He says, sometimes you just got to throw on some cowboy boots. So obviously Quentin Grimes went to Houston. I believe he's from that area. Maybe there could be some ties there. He's also been active on TikTok, so maybe it's, I don't know, some trend. But could this signal that Quentin Grimes has something with Dallas or Houston, right? He played for Dallas. I don't know. Interesting stuff. So people thought that this meant that Grimes could potentially leave Philly. I don't know if I'm buying too much stock into that, because then we get this from yesterday. Quentin Grimes makes a post on his IG story, and it's him dunking a basketball with a 76ers uniform on. You have the New York Knicks on the other side and the crowd looking on to Quentin Grimes. Does this mean that he is talented, that he can score, that everybody's just waiting and watching on? I mean, this is what we do in the middle of the offseason. We definitely speculate. I think this is probably just him, posting something about basketball, saying, look, man, like, I want to be back on the court. I want to be here in Philly, but they have to give me the fair value. Again, there are a handful of restricted free agents who are pretty good players that still have not signed yet. So we're kind of just in wait and see mode, and the teams don't really have any rush to, make a higher offer. They have most of the leverage right now outside of the fact that these players could get pissed off and then play on a one-year deal and not really be focused and go into free agency next year, even though, on the other hand, to get a bigger contract, they're going to have another great season. So kind of a messed up situation, but Quentin Grimes, is seeing everything. He's posting a lot on TikTok. And he knows, what the situation is. Trust me, he sees everybody's comments. So that's where we're at with Q Dot. But let's talk about another Sixers guard who apparently is going back overseas. Lonnie Walker is signing with Tel Aviv in the Euro League, and he is no longer in the NBA right now. I think this is pretty surprising. I did not expect him to be back with the Sixers after he got, waived and cut or whatever. But I did expect another team to take a shot at him, because Lonnie Walker came to the Sixers on a 2-year deal at the All-Star break. And no, he wasn't perfect. He had a really rough start, but I thought he played pretty well overall, and he's still in his mid-20s. So, a nice athletic, high-flying combo guard. He can do some interesting things with the ball in his hands. I like Lonnie Walker, and I wish him the best of luck. I'm sure he'll probably be back in the NBA at some point this season, even though I don't know how his contract situation is now. So shout out to Lonnie Walker. But we really have to talk about another important Sixers guard, probably the most important player right now, because all eyes are on VJ Edgecombe. And an article was put out today by Bleacher Report. They detailed a report from ESPN where an executive from the Eastern Conference was talking to an ESPN reporter. And this is what he had to say, quote, VJ might be Philly's second best player by the end of the season, factoring in Joel Embiid's uncertain health. He's that good and will thrive playing in Nick Nurse's system. So there is a lot of hype about VJ Edgecombe. They say that VJ Edgecombe, who was selected with the 3rd overall pick over Ace Bailey, has two-way skills that made him more of a fit on Philadelphia's roster, which is led by Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George. Edgecomb had 2 summer league games. He averaged 21.5 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 steals, and had a dominant performance against Ace Bailey in the opener. So leading up to the draft, we discussed a bunch of his skills, right? That supercharged role player prototype, a guy who's going to be able to put it on the floor and also develop that part of his game and throw down a couple dunks and get 3 steals in a game and, you know, guard the other team's best scorer on some nights as a point of attack threat. And VJ Edgecombe has to do a little bit of everything. Now, again, we still need to see his overall game develop, but he feels like a piece that you can insert day one who's going to have some type of impact. So when we hear this kind of quote, this magnitude of a quote, I mean, it's kind of shocking. You know, it just goes to show where Philly is at right now. Joel Embiid and Paul George obviously need to be healthy this season for the Sixers to have any chance of doing anything. But for VJ Edgecombe to be Philly's second best player as a rookie by the end of the season, that shows just how little confidence there is in the Sixers' max contract stars, because a rookie should not end up being your second best player unless you're a team that is at the bottom of the conference year after year. You're picking number 1 overall in the draft, and you really are just in full rebuild mode right now. Now, again, maybe the Sixers are, right? I mean, they're kind of building these 2 different timelines. You have Maxey, McCain, VJ, and those types of guys. And then you have Paul George and Joel Embiid who are on max contracts, and you're trying to mesh the 2 together. But based on injury status and health, who knows if your max contract guys are going to be out there. Nonetheless, at least from what I'm hearing, it feels like the pulse of the fan base is more on the side of, let's just let the young guys go out, compete. If Paul George and Joel Embiid are not healthy, then these guys will make the basketball at least fun for this year and, you know, start to transition into that next phase of how do we get a lot younger, a lot quicker, more athletic, and build without having a couple top-heavy contracts on the roster. So do I think VJ Edgecombe can be Philly's second best player at the end of the year? Probably not, but if everybody's hurt again, then he might be one of the best guys on the team from year number 1. He also has to stay on the floor. So it's going to be interesting to see how Nick Nurse really utilizes him as kind of a multi-positional, versatile chess piece. And I think that will be one of the interesting storylines to keep our eyes on as we enter training camp. Now, the last thing that we will keep our eyes on is the Sixers roster depth chart. Now, we included Grimes in this graphic over on our IG page just because we do expect him to re-sign at this point. It's just a matter of when. But here is the projected lineup, and you let me know what you think. Is this a championship roster or a championship lineup? You have Maxey, Grimes, PG, Trendon Watford at the 4, and Joel Embiid. And then your second unit is Jared McCain, VJ Edgecombe, Justin Edwards, Kelly Oubre Jr., Adem Bona, and then a couple other guys who are like back into the rotation pieces as of now, as we predict based on Nick Nurse's coaching, is Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, Ricky Council, Janai Broome, and Andre Drummond. So what do we think? Would you change anything about this? When I look at this team overall, if healthy, I think, yeah, they can be a pretty solid roster. You look at the Eastern Conference, feels wide open. Any team can take charge. The health concerns are absolutely legitimate, and we can't be confident until we see it in training camp, in the preseason, on the floor, like Daryl Morey said. But if Joel and PG can play a majority of the season, I do feel like this could be a top 4 or 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. But at the same time, I go back to the same concerns. Number 1 is rebounding. You know, is Trendon Watford ready to step in and be that guy? Right? Gershon Yabusele would have been a nice piece. Who knows if he would have been enough? They still need a natural power forward who can take some of that pressure off Joel Embiid's shoulders, hit some spot-up threes, and just impact the floor even defensively in the post. So I look at that 4 position, and I think it's a little bit iffy, right? Who knows how Oubre and Edwards fit into the mix. Edwards, a little bit of a rough summer league. But then VJ, right? Like, can VJ play a small ball 4? Probably not. Can he play the 3? Maybe in some lineups. The 2, yes. And will he ever get to being a lead guard? That is a legitimate question. What about Janai Broome? You know, is he quick enough? Does he have the tools right now to get some legitimate minutes? And what about the backup center position? Right? Adem Bona showed a ton of flashes, but it feels like Nurse and Morey want to lean more towards the veteran in Andre Drummond. Will he have anything left? I still think it's ridiculous that Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon are on this team. I would have much rather brought back a guy like Lonnie Walker than Kyle Lowry. And then you have a few others that are just unknowns, right? Like, will Jared McCain be healthy from day one? How does Grimes fit into the mix as a guy who may only get, 10 to 15 shots a night at most, with these other guys around? So I definitely think it's going to be interesting. And, if things do not align this year, if they do not mesh together, I think it could get pretty ugly for the fan base, and I think they'll all just be pushing for a complete rebuild. The Sixers stats, obviously last year was an outlier, right? Like Grimes was even the third leading scorer on the team. Hard to take all that into account with how many guys were injured. But even just going back a couple years before, like it's always been top heavy with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, and they need complementary role players around. The stats would make you think they're pretty good, but it's just been very inconsistent. You need dogs. You need guys that can impact the game in multiple ways. That's why I think an Eastern Conference executive is making these types of comments about VJ Edgecombe, because he can be a guy to impact the floor in multiple ways. But you're going to need more shooting. You're going to need more versatile defenders on this team. So we'll see what happens there, man. But those are all my thoughts as of right now. What do you think about this roster? Are they a championship team as it stands right now? My stance is no, one, until we see everybody actually get on the floor healthy, but also, they need to continue to improve this team, especially at the forward depth. So we will talk about all of it as we continue through the offseason. Give me your thoughts down below. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you on the next one. Peace.